Okay, so now we are recording. Sorry about that. This presentation and other presentations and any supplemental materials that we have will be loaded to a Google Drive, okay? And you can go to that Google Drive and then you can download it on your computer, or you can go back and look at it at any time, okay? And so if you forget about something, just go back to that Google Drive. I usually send the link out when I send the reminder for the next class. So usually on Mondays, you'll get a reminder for the class. It depends on how busy I am. I'd like to do it the Friday before, but if I get really swamped, you may not get a reminder until that Monday, but you'll always get the link, and the Google Drive link remains the same. Okay, and for those of you that are Zooming, or you may need to Zoom if you're not feeling well or something comes up, you can watch the program on your computer at home. And I know with the increases in the new COVID variants, there may be times when you need to stay home, and that's fine. If you're not feeling good, we encourage you to stay home, okay? Because we want you to get well and we don't want others to get sick. So, and we don't have a mask requirement while I'm on COVID, but if you feel like you need to wear a mask, please do so, okay? But it's not a requirement in the county buildings anymore. So they've loosened those things up. But just remember, you can Zoom up to 5 times. Okay, we're starting to limit that, and that's because I want to see your smiling faces here in class. Okay, so all right, so that'll be on the Google Drive. We'll usually have a break. We'll have a presenter that'll go an hour, hour and a half, and then we'll take a break and eat, and then we'll go on and have the rest of our program. Most of the time we don't go until 9 o'clock, but we do have some long-winded speakers that might go until 9 o'clock. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I've known Hebrew for 24 years too, so. All right. Now, this is a choice for you all. Would you like to bring your own food, or would you like to do a potluck dinner each Tuesday? That means that I would need a volunteer that would help set up to make sure that somebody is bringing in, or a certain amount of people are bringing in food each week. So would you rather just bring your own, or would you rather have a potluck and we'll just have food out? Everybody will bring a little bit of something each week. Okay, raise your hand if you'd rather bring your own food. Okay, we're about split right down the middle, aren't we? Okay, so potluck. Okay, we've only got a couple people on potluck. Okay, well, you will be responsible for bringing in your own food. I mean, if you do decide you want to bring in a tray of cookies or something to share, feel free to do so. Just make sure, if you're going to share, bring enough for everybody. But we will provide, I'll have coffee and tea and water. Will be supplied for you, and then you'll be bringing your own dinner then. So, okay. That makes life a little bit easier for us. So. Okay, and so what does the university expect of you in return? Okay, we expect you to do volunteer hours. We expect you to attend the classes, and we expect you to do that pre-test and post-test. Then you will be given a attendance certificate, and a graduation is after you do your 40 hours. We're going to go through that in just a second. And then we've got certain policies and procedures that you need to go by. So this is the part that this is your practical and intensive training, okay? We don't expect you to come out knowing everything about horticulture, okay? That's a 4-year degree or more. But we do expect you to learn the basics of gardening and how to help people in the community, because this is a volunteer-based program. And so we expect you to give back to the community what we're teaching you, okay? And so you're going to learn more about Tennessee plants. Here in Clarksville, we have a lot of transplants, a lot of people moving in from different areas. We have a lot of military people. We have a lot of turnover in our program because, you know, every 2 to 3 years, the military is moving in and out. So we do have a lot of turnover in our program due to that, but we've always had pretty good attendance in the classes. So just remember that one of your main objectives is to share your knowledge with others, and the hands-on learning part is going to come after your classroom learning when you're working on our projects and such. So as interns, once you complete this class, you are required to earn 40 hours of volunteer service. Now, we have volunteer service and we have CEUs, which are continued education units. As an intern, you only have to earn those 40 hours to do your volunteer work. You do not have to earn CEUs your first year, okay? So, and you cannot begin volunteering and accruing hours until you finish the class. Now, that's a new state rule. I can't change that. So we will finish up in November, and so then you'll get your attendance certificate in December when we have our banquet and such, and then you can go ahead and start doing your hours. Okay, usually by December, if there's not a lot going on at that time of the year. So, you know, January through November is our reporting year. And so you're going to have from January till November to accrue those 40 hours. Okay. Now, when you're doing volunteer work, from the time you leave home, you go and work on the project until the time you get back home, you count all those hours. Okay, like if it takes you 30 minutes to drive out and work here at the extension office, you work here for an hour, takes you 30 minutes to drive home. Okay, that's 2 hours of volunteer time. Okay, and we do like you to keep track of your mileage too, because I'll put a number on it. So your hours, we put your volunteer hours, volunteers are worth almost $30 an hour. And then your mileage, we just put it 57 cents is the state reimbursement right now. So, and then we do have the Montgomery County Master Gardener Association, which Roger is our president. And so as an intern, your first year is free. And then after that, if you want to remain in the association, it's just $20 a year. And they meet on a monthly basis, and we usually meet here, and we'll have a speaker come in. We'll have a kind of a meet and greet. We like to eat. We really like to eat. So we have some wonderful meals, and there's just a wealth of knowledge in the room once you start meeting all these people. So we want you to get to know our certified master gardeners, We want you to be working with our new folks and our interns to make sure they're getting their hours in. So, yes. Okay, the meetings are the second Thursday of the month and typically start at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, it gives us a little bit of time to do a meet and greet, and we start the meeting at 6:30, or we eat at 6:30. 7 is the business meeting and the program, and we're usually out of here by about 8 o'clock or 8:30. But we will send out email reminders about those meetings when they are coming up. Most of the time they are here unless otherwise notified. Sometimes we will meet at a nursery. Sometimes we've gone to people's houses to meet and kind of do a little garden tour. So when the weather's warmer out, we might meet at different locations. So that makes it a little bit more interesting than just meeting here all the time. So, but you'll see that on the little reminder email that comes out. And then if you decide, after you've done your 40 hours, you've gotten certified, you're an official Tennessee Extension Master Gardener, if you want to stay in the program and retain your certification, you're required to do a minimum of 25 hours plus earn 8 CEUs. Now, the 8 CEUs, or a CEU is 1 hour of education for yourself equals 1 CEU. So our master gardeners that are sitting in on this meeting tonight, if we stay here the whole 3 hours, then they're going to earn 3 CEUs. Okay. And so you can do the same thing next year if you want to come back and sit in on classes. If you go to a garden show and you go to the lectures, if you go to some of our field days, things like that, those are all CEUs. When you're gaining education for yourself, so 1 hour education equals 1 CEU, okay? So, and we do have a database, and you can keep track of your hours. I would recommend that you get a little calendar and keep track of your hours and enter them at least on a monthly basis. But we have, let's see if I can get it to do this. And this copy is going to be available to you. It's not going to let me do that. Okay. All right. But there's a link online. And how many of you have Facebook? Just curious. Okay. You can set up a Facebook profile. You can set up this profile. Okay. It's not hard to do at all. So you have to use the email that you signed up with, and everybody has to have their own email. So if you've signed up, the husband and wife, you can't use just one email. You've got to have 2 emails for our system, because it won't accept the one for more than one person. So you'll create a profile, you'll create a username with usually your email and a password. And then you go into that database on a timely basis and put in your hours. So as I said, the travel time, this is, a lot of people forget about this. Your travel time does count if you're going to volunteer at an event. It does not count if you're just going to a place to earn CEUs. Then you don't count your travel, right? So your levels of volunteers, we start out as interns. Your first year, you are an intern. You're working on those 40 hours of volunteer service, and then going for the certified Master Gardener status. So to become certified, you take the course, complete the pre and post test, complete the 40 hours or more. And if you're already certified, then you do 25 hours and 8 CEUs. As an intern, you do 40. I'm sorry, reading ahead of myself. We do have a Master Gardener VIP. That's if you've had 3 years in the program, or if you've just done exceptional service within your first couple of years, you might be honored as a Master Gardener VIP. Okay, and we usually do all this in December at our banquet. We do recognize 5 years, 10, 15, 20. 10 years is the mark that most people look forward to, because that reduces the hours that are required to keep you certified as a Master Gardener. So if you have 10 or more hours, you become a lifetime member, and you only have to do 15 hours of volunteer service. And it's a combination actually of CEUs and volunteer service. So once you hit that 10-year mark, your requirement goes down to 15 hours per year. Okay? But you don't have to stop there. Most people don't stop there, because we have, I guess it's on the next slide. Yeah, we have the Gold Club. So this kind of gets to be a competition to see who's going to be the Gold Club winner of the year, who's going to put in the most hours. So we go through, and it goes in 100-hour increments. So those that do like 100 to 110 hours, whatever, they'll get a pin that says they did 100 hours, 200 hours, 300, 400, 500, on and on. So we will recognize those folks in December. So that's why consistent reporting is definitely critical. As an extension agent, I do have to report back to the state, and your hours, your volunteer work, and your success in the program, that kind of justifies my position in the county. You know, the university wants to know what I'm doing, why they're paying me to do this. So you can apply for a leave of absence after you've completed the program. If something comes up and you have health problems or need to take care of a loved one, whatever, life happens. You can apply for a leave of absence, and that just gives you a waiver for a year. And that just kind of stops the clock for a year. If you come back and you come back at the end of that year, you want to be reactivated, we reactivate you. And I just keep track of that on a spreadsheet, okay? Because we do honor, our 5, 10, 15 years. So it's hard to keep up with sometimes. So, but I do have, we do have those waivers available, but you are supposed to have completed your hours first. So you would be considered in active status. Once we get through the class, you are an active Master Gardener, okay? And that is recertified once a year. Like I said, the recertification is 25 hours in 8 CEUs. If you go inactive, that means I need a waiver on you, okay? It makes it easier for me if somebody leaves the program and they want to come back, if I have a waiver form on file. So that puts you in inactive status, and then you're not doing any Master Gardener hours during that period because you're marked inactive. And so the university knows that you're inactive during that time period. So, but just letting you know that that option is available if you come into some kind of problems. Don't quit, just come talk to me, okay? We can work around it. The lifetime status, I did just go over. Out of state, we've got one transfer tonight from New York. All right, and she's grandfathered into the program because she was in good standing with her program in New York, and so she's come here and she's going to audit the class and join the association. So that's how our program does. Other states may be different. Okay. A lot of states have a lot higher requirements than what we do on our hours. 25 is actually low. I've seen other states that require like 100 hours a year all the time, when you're an intern after that, So I think our requirements are fairly reasonable. It's not hard to get that 40 hours with as many projects as we have going. So, okay, we talked about the CEUs. You are allowed to miss 3 out of the 13 sessions. If you could let me know in advance, that would be awesome. And I would probably give you some kind of a worksheet or something out of one of the old study guides that I used to make up. Just something to show me that you have gone through the chapter and you've read it, or you can go back to the presentations. If you have to miss a class, you can always go back and view that on the recorded ones online. So, but technically we call it 3 classes that you can miss. The final test, I used to make a hard test. I really did. And it included a landscape design component, but I kind of eased up on that a little bit and went to the pre-test, post-test, because that was a lot easier really on me to do that. So, but it makes it easier on y'all too. So you'll be given that post-test at the last class. And then, like I said, the certification, graduation, you'll get an attendance certificate this year in December. Then you'll go a year, and December of 2023, if you've completed your 40 hours, then you'll become a certified Master Gardener. So, and we do have a nice banquet in December. The policies and procedures, they're in your volunteer guidebook. It should be the first chapter in your book. So if you ever have any questions about what might count for hours and what might not, I mean, you can always try to call me, or you can send me an email and say, hey, does this count for hours? Can I do this? Can I do that? Because working on your own yard does not count as volunteer hours. Okay, the only exception to that is if you're going to be on a garden tour, you're doing something that you're showing your yard to the public. Okay, that's the only time we'll let you count hours for working on your own yard. Okay, so but we want our projects to be outreach. We want you out in the community doing things. So if you go to this page, mastergardener.tennessee.edu, and again, this will be up on the Google Drive, and you'll go, I believe it's still this way, Master Gardener Resources, you'll go to Reports, and then you can go to your profile, And as I said, make sure that you use the email that you signed up with, or if you make a change on your profile, then you've got to let me know, or it won't let you back in the system. Okay, as we've got a thing called Super, which is super annoying. It's our reporting system. And so Miss Eileen has been great because she knows I hate to do data entry. And so she usually enters all that information for me, but then you all are responsible for doing your own profiles and entering your hours. Okay, I don't know your password. If you forget your password, there's a little reset deal. And if this, I can't get to the site, but if you just go through that site, you'll see it's easy. But your instructors are going to be, and maybe professors from different universities. We'll use our master gardeners. Some are going to advocate proper use of chemicals. Some are going to advocate organic gardening. So you're going to have to kind of keep an open mind with our presenters, that you're going to hear both aspects. With me, I promote integrated pest management, using the least amount of chemicals possible to control the problem. And to do that, you have to identify the problem first, then go spray something. Okay, whether it's organic or whether it's a synthetic spray, you got to know what you're spraying, what the problem is before you go spraying chemicals. So in all classes, you're going to hear a little bit of both ways of handling insect and pest problems. Okay. The presentations themselves, they generally do follow the book. Okay. Some of our presenters go a little bit, they may add their own to these presentations. We've got a group, it's a leadership team for master gardeners, and that team has developed all the presentations and wrote this new handbook material and such like that. And so we do have canned presentations available, but some of our presenters still like to use their own. They're going to go over the same basics, but it may not follow word for word what you're seeing in your book. So I would still recommend, look at what the subject is for the class coming up and go ahead and read through that section. And that way you'll be prepared to answer any question or ask any questions of the speakers while they're here. And, you're going to read it, you're going to hear it, and then you're going to go out and do it. And you're going to retain it, hopefully. So, okay. Any questions? Oh, okay. Okay, we can get you one from Miss Eileen before you leave. She needs a schedule. There wasn't one in her book. Let me see if I can. All right. What I was going to do, you'll be patient with me here for just a second. Oh, I can't minimize it a little bit. Okay. 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 What you're seeing now is the Master Gardener database. What do you mean? Yeah, it will be recorded. It'll be like right now. You'll see me in a little corner.
Yeah, if we have to zoom in, do we have to show video?
No, you don't have to show your video. Okay, yeah. Just make sure when you do sign into Zoom, I do go back and that's how I take roll. So make sure you sign in with the name that I know you by, because if you have a nickname on there, I don't know what your nickname is, or if you use your computer name, I don't know what that is. So makes it hard. So make sure you put your name on there at least, or check in the chat box, say, hey, I'm here. So that way I can keep track of roll. So this is the Master Gardener database. And so what you would do first is you would register. And so you're going to put your email in, you're going to create your password. It's going to ask you to confirm your password and then click register. And then it will come up where you add your profile information in. And I'm just going to kind of skip back over here. So I do have myself in as a master gardener, so I'm going to log in. And your profile, you're going to look at your dashboard up here. You've got the home, CEUs, projects. Your Master Gardener handbook is on there. You can look through the chapters. If you're at work or something and you want to look over your book, you can go pull this up. Events is where I would put in an event if we were having an event where you would need to add your hours there. And then the admin is just stuff that I can see. So for example, you're working on a project, okay? So you click on project and then you're gonna log in your project hours. So when you click on that button, you're gonna see this little drop-down box down here. And you're gonna click on the arrow and it brings up all of our projects that we have as ongoing projects. And some of them that are not ongoing projects or not, they're not association projects. They might be projects that I'm in charge of, like the Kleeman Community Garden. Okay, that's not something that the association has taken on, but it does count as Master Gardener hours. And if you do something, if you're doing things that doesn't fall into any of these categories, just put it under general. Okay, so if you've gone and given a talk to a school, maybe worked with kids or church or something like that, and it doesn't fall into a project, you would put it under general volunteer activities. Okay, so like when I click on there, and then you've got to click this little thing right here. I don't know what you call it, but you got to click on it, and then it brings up that right there. And so then you would put your hours that you've done, your miles, and then I always just let it default to the current date. As long as it's within the reporting year, it's fine. Now, if you decide that you're going to work on one project, like let's say that you decide that you like working at Dunbar Cave, okay, and you've done the majority of your hours there, and it gets to be October and hours are due in November. You can go back and just add up all your hours that you spent working on Dunbar Cave or wherever, and just put them in bulk. Okay, so one way or another, keep track of your hours, whatever is easier for you. Some people like to do it, input the information right after they finish doing hours, and some people will wait and they'll just add those up and they'll put them in as a bulk entry. Then your CEUs, you go back to your dashboard. Yes, dashboard. I'm sorry. And then you're gonna just do the same thing. You're gonna log your CEU hours. It's gonna ask you some questions about what you did to earn education units, and then always click submit when you're done, and then it saves it. Yeah, but it's showing some extra boxes because it's under the admin. So some of this is, your dashboard may look a little bit different. But if you want to look in there and see how many hours that you've done for the year, you just go to home, hit that year-to-date dashboard, and it's going to come up and it's going to show, okay, this volunteer has done 3 hours at Dunbar Cave. Okay, so it shows all of that. And then let's see, what's the other one? I can get into the county dashboard, and I can go in here and I can look at everybody's hours. I can see what you all are doing, but I can't see your passwords or anything like that. Okay. Yes, I will send you instructions, and I will, this presentation will be put on the Google Drive. So you really don't have to worry about this too much. I just wanted to go ahead and show you so you have an idea when it's time that you can go ahead and start entering those. So, yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
change our email here.
Yeah.
Like, we need
You got to let me know. Mhm. Because we've got you, or I've got you entered into my email system, and I will share your email with our newsletter and website folks. And so when it gets the week before we have a regular meeting, you'll get a newsletter from the Master Gardener Association. And you'll also get a reminder card that tells you when, where the meeting's happening. But our newsletter, you know, I have little articles in it. It has all our project listings and the project chair people that you would need to contact if you wanted to work on a certain project. All that's in there. And so I'll share that, like I said, with our newsletter folks, and you'll get a newsletter and those reminders. But yeah, if you change anything in here, or if you change your email, make sure you let me know, because it will goof up the system and things won't go right. But if you forget your password, it gives you a link or an option right at the beginning. So I'm still trying to find that directory, Roger. Oh, there it is right there in front of me. Okay, so this shows everybody that's in our association and their addresses and all their information. And there's not enough people in there. But you have to agree when you set up your profile to have your information in there. So that's kind of strange that I'm only seeing a few. Oh. Yeah, I'm probably, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to set the date range and all that stuff. Okay, I'm not gonna get slowed down on that. We can go over this again, probably in November, maybe go over it real quickly and get you all set up towards the end of the classes. So, okay. All right, so that covers that part. Does anybody have any questions about what you need to do, where we're at this point? Because you don't have to worry about setting your profile up until the end of classes, really. So, because you can't approve any hours yet. So, okay. All right, well, it is 7 o'clock. And so, are you ready, Stephen? Okay. Okay, so do we need a break before we let Stephen go? Do you need a short break? Okay, okay. We'll take about a 10-minute break and let him get his presentation ready. And then we'll come back together and get more food if you need more food. So. Okay, that's what I was. Aha. Okay, well, I think we're ready to get started with our class on botany. This does tend to be a little bit long, so just have patience. And Stephen is a very good teacher. Stephen Smith is the son of a master gardener, and he's a master gardener himself and has kind of grown up in the program. I've known him since he used to be shorter than me. At one point, he was shorter than me. So, but Stephen and Hebron, that's father and son. They both teach school up in Kentucky. I'll let you tell about your background if you want. He's been a seed saver. He just got all kinds of knowledge about botany and plants. So we've got Stephen Smith, and thank you for being here. And it's all yours. It's still recorded. Yeah.
Okay, so as Carla mentioned, I am a master gardener. I am only 25. I'll be 26 in 2.5 months. I lived in Pennsylvania for 3 years, running a nonprofit that taught people how to grow their own food and turn it into food. I've been seed saving my entire life. I currently am an English teacher. So hopefully everyone in the back can hear me. This is how I usually talk when I'm teaching. I teach English to 12th graders in Kentucky at my old high school. My dad is one of our new science teachers. I'm also going to get dual certified to teach earth and space science and biology as well. I have a master's degree in plant breeding and genetics with a minor in entomology and weed science from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm an English teacher, I can't speak. But this basic botany, what I'm getting ready to go through with you all, this is about an entire college semester's worth of material within about 2 or 3 hours. It is going to be a lot, so do bear with me. I understand. But your basics are very important. This is from the Florida chapter of Master Gardeners. It is the same. Botany does not change most of the time. It is. Oh, so a lot of people always ask me, because before I changed my degree to agriculture, I was originally going to be a botanist. I grew up studying the plants, the wild plants and the flora of this state. Dr. Dwayne Estes at Austin P, I know him. Andrea Bishop, who used to be with the Department of Conservation with Tennessee, I knew her too. Todd Crabtree, I think, took her role over, but I was going to be a botanist at one point. I have a collection of rare wildflowers within the state, some of which I'm the only person that currently grows. But I always get asked, what is botany? Botany is the scientific study of plants. This ranges from their classification to their evolution, to their structure, their internal and external. Internal is called anatomy, external is called morphology. And it's also their physiology and their ecology, as well as their uses. Before modern medicine, all medicine was generally plant-based. Aspirin used to come from willow trees originally. A lot of the medications that are out there for cancer, they come from plants. I have one of them that is grown to make that medicine. Heart medicine came from digitalis, from foxgloves originally. A lot of things were plant-based. We've moved past that when we moved into having modern medicine. You will hear this called plant science or plant biology. I still call it botany because that's what it is to me. Horticulture itself is the art and science of cultivating these plants, including ornamentals, fruits, and vegetables. Botany and horticulture go hand in hand, because if you don't know botany, you can't participate in horticulture or be a horticulturalist. You can't be a botanist if you don't understand botany. They go hand in hand. I'm not going to go into that. Surely we all know what a plant is. I hope we all know what a plant is. I had people when I lived in Pennsylvania that thought peppers grew underground. I kid you not. I'm like, you're thinking of peanuts, some cowpeas, some black-eyed peas grow underground, but you're thinking of peanuts, not peppers. Please don't ask me to grow anything because you shouldn't have a garden, period. You just should not have a garden if that's what you think peppers come from. But a plant is a photosynthetic multicellular organism. They contain photosynthetic pigments called chlorophyll. It's what makes plants green. Plants are capable of making their own food. They grow and feed off of sugar, and they store it usually in the form of starch, which is still a sugar. Starch is a carbohydrate. And these here are some of the native wildflowers we have called trilliums. Now, we all have probably remember vaguely from our days in high school of plant processes. Photosynthesis is the most common. It is when plants take light and carbohydrates and when they take light and turn it into sugar, when they turn it into carbohydrates, and that is then moved throughout the plant. This is the chemical formula for photosynthesis. 6 carbon dioxides with 6 water plus light yields sugar and oxygen. Oxygen is what we breathe. Sugar is what the plants use to grow, and also what we eat, depending on which part of the plant you're eating. Basically, you can think of it if you were on the Magic School Bus with Miss Frizzle. That dates me too. Sun goes in, water, of course, comes up through the roots, and sugar and oxygen are produced outward in a way, not necessarily the outward we are aware of. Respiration is a process where these carbohydrates are broken down into the actual energy that the plant will use. Raw sugar is not usable by plants. They have to break it down. So you're in photosynthesis, the sugar and the oxygen is mixed within the plant and it yields energy. The energy is still sugar-based. Plants run off of carbohydrates. That's the way plant evolution happened. Now, plant growth is a balance. Photosynthesis itself produces food. Energy is stored. We will look at how this energy is stored later in this presentation. It occurs in the cells within chlorophyll itself. Without chlorophyll, plants would not survive unless you're a parasitic plant. Then you feed off of other plants. But as master gardeners, you will probably not hear of parasitic plants all that much. Broom rape is not a problem here anymore. The only thing you may hear of is something called daughter vine, love vine. It is a parasitic plant that evolved no chlorophyll. It looks like spaghetti, but it sucks out the nutrients out of other plants. It's a vine. It's related to mortingboards. You may see it. It's common on the roadsides here. They're blooming right about now. Also called devil's shoestrings because it is a parasite. Mistletoe is a parasite on trees. But normally as master gardeners, you all won't have to deal with that. Daughter vine will be the closest you will probably come to. But oxygen, again, is released in photosynthesis and carbon dioxide is used. And photosynthesis occurs in light. The chlorophyll will not work without light. Respiration itself uses food for energy. The energy is released and it occurs in all cells. The oxygen is used and carbon dioxide is produced in respiration. Respiration occurs in dark or light. A lot of your respiration and transpiration occur at night. Plants only grow at night. They do not grow during the day. It's too hot. They shut down. They will only grow usually at night because it's cooler and usually more water is available, unless you're in a drought. And like I was saying with transpiration, it is the process from which moisture is carried from the roots throughout all of the pores of the plant, which are called stomates, stomata. And these open up usually at night. and they release water vapor into the atmosphere. This mixed with the ocean is what regulates our rainfall. Without plants, Earth would have never been green the way it is today. There are factors that increase transpiration, warm temperature, bright sunlight, low humidity, wind, moist soil, or dry wilt versus wet wilt. Some plants will wilt if they're too wet. Generally, that will give you root rot if they're too wet. But again, this is why plants during the summer when it's hot, they shut their stomata so they don't lose a bunch of water. Even cacti have stomata. But without transpiration, the plant would have too much water. It has to release some of it because they take up a lot. It's just how plants evolve. Now, one of my favorite aspects of botany is plant classification, which is also called plant taxonomy. If I was a botanist, I would leave names be because they keep reclassifying everything. Asparagus is now related to daylilies, which relatively speaking, sure, but they can't leave well enough alone. But plant taxonomy is the classification, naming, description, and identification of plants. As master gardeners, you will have to understand plant taxonomy. If someone says, I'm growing squash, what does that mean? Zucchini, crookneck, pumpkins, gourds. Gourds are also African gourds, a completely different genus from Cucurbita pepo, which is the zucchini that we eat today. I can't stress how important plant taxonomy is for you all. Without it, you will not be able to be a master gardener. I will just go ahead and plain out say it. It is complicated when you get into certain aspects, but as with most things with we humans, it is from Greek. Taxis means arrangement, and nomos means laws or rules. Now, biologically speaking, classification is ordered in a hierarchy. Most of us might recall this from biology as well. And the order is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, species can be broken down much smaller. Generally, we don't do that. In the wild, you will find a bunch of plants broken down into subspecies and subgenre. That's when it gets very confusing. Your phylums will end in phyta. Your class will end in opsida. Your order will end in ales. Your family will end in aca. The genus, the first letter of a genus is capitalized and italicized, and the species name is lowercase and italicized. That is the proper way to do it. As an English teacher, please follow this. It will drive me mad if not. But family, genus, and species are most relevant to you all. Rarely do you have to go up the tree. Up the tree is more broad. When you get down to species, that's very specific. That's the whole point. You want to be specific because, again, things may have the same common name. And this is what I was talking about. Subspecies or variety is naturally occurring. Is usually designated with sub-SP, SSP period, or VAR for variety, and it is italicized. This is a wild sunflower native to Florida. Helianthus debilis subspecies cucumberifolia, the cucumber leaf sunflower. It is a subspecies. The first part of this works. The first part of this is this is your genus. Helianthus is a sunflower genus. This is your species. That word debilis usually means beech. These are common in beaches. We have wild sunflowers native. I have one from Tennessee named after a botanist, Eggert. And then this is your subspecies. And then a cultivar, which we all should be very familiar with. It is bred or selected by man. It is usually designated with a single quote or with CV, and it is not generally italicized. I'm sure most of you have been to Lowe's and you see Rosa Blue Girl. Blue Girl will be in quotations. Like this camellia here. I'm gonna have to zoom out. Okay, well, you still can't see it. Zoom out one more time. So this is a camellia. These used to be popular here at one point in time. These are related to where we get tea from, black tea. Green tea comes from this plant, not this particular plant, but it is from a plant in the genus of camellia. This is Camellia japonica debutante. Debutante is the cultivar. It is in quotations or quotes. I've seen it written both ways. A single quote is usually what it should be in, but it can be done either way. But you see, these are not italicized. Your scientific name should be, because it's easier to differentiate. Plants are also classified by their life cycle. Plants generally fall in three categories: annual, biennial, and perennial. Now, you get plants that do not fall into just a single category. Some plants are what I call biperennials. Foxgloves and hollyhocks are examples. Usually these are defined as short-lived perennials. I call them biperennials because they take 2 years to bloom. If you planted foxgloves this year, you wouldn't get flowers until next year. And then they should live for 2 or 3, 4 years. And then they'll reseed, die out, and the process begins again. Hollyhocks are the exact same way. An annual is a plant that completes its life cycle in 1 year. That's what most of us are usually used to growing. Sunflowers, corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers are all annuals. Biennials take, again, 2 years to bloom. Thistles that grow wild here are native thistles and the introduced nodding thistle and bull thistle. They are biennial. They produce a rosette of leaves this year and they will bloom next year. They have to have a cold period in order to trigger their flowering. That cold or winter is what triggers their flowering, along with photoperiod. Perennials come back year after year. They're our favorite, or one of my favorites, because it doesn't mean I have to get outside and replant them every single year. But your cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower and radishes and turnips, they are technically biennial if you were to save seed. I have a collection of heirloom corn. I have 2,000 varieties of heirloom corn, the largest non-government funded collection of corn in the U.S. I have tomatoes that were considered extinct for 200 years. Seed saving is important. But if you were to save seed out of your cabbage and your broccoli and everything, it is biennial. It has to go over winter before it will bloom. Some years you get to plant your radishes and your turnips and they will bloom the same year. Most brassicas will not. Brassica is the genus that most of your cabbage and everything falls into. Also with plants, they can be classified by life stages: embryonic, juvenile, transitional, reproduction, dormancy, and senescence. If you're in another region, you will often use latitude. We are generally considered temperate to subtropical. Also usage, whether they're fruit, a vegetable, ornamental, fiber, a dye, medicinal, or forage. And they can be almost all of those together. And then growing or flowering season. Some are warm season versus cool season, wet season or dry season. Some plants are adapted to blooming after it rains. And with usage with fruits, a tomato is botanically a fruit, but we still consider it a vegetable. I will always consider it a vegetable because to me, that's what it is. You can make pies with tomatoes. There also can be classified by tissue type: herbaceous, softwood, semi-hardwood, or hardwood. Herbaceous is what 99% of your plants you will encounter are. They're usually soft-stemmed. Generally, again, most of the plants you're going to encounter. Softwood is often designated to some trees and shrubs. And then hardwood is your trees and most of your shrubs. They're not soft. They're hardwoods. Water needs. You generally may not hear this term that much, but you can use xerophyte or halophyte. If you want drought tolerant, you want xerophyte. That means they're drought tolerant. They don't need a lot of water. Foliage retention: evergreen, semi-evergreen, and deciduous. Evergreen are the trees, of course, or plants that stay green the entire year. They do not lose their leaves. Some plants are semi-evergreen. They may keep their leaves longer. And then you have deciduous trees, which is what happens in the fall here. All of the leaves fall down. The trees lose them. Some species like oaks and beech, they shed their leaves, but it doesn't happen until the spring growth pushes them off. It's to deter deer from eating the newly growing buds. They're smart like that. And then monocot and dicot. This is based on cotyledons, the two leaves, quote unquote, that come when a seed germinates. But you can also do it by vascular stem arrangement, leaf venation, and the floral parts. Each has numbers. Now, under plant classification, your genus and species was created by this man, Carolus Linnaeus. He was a Swedish botanist. He was a brilliant man. And it allows for the identification of using the genus and species. Prior to this, a single rose bush, its scientific name was about 10 words long for one rose bush. You can imagine how Linnaeus probably felt. Linnaeus is one of my favorite people. He's holding one of the plants he discovered that was named after him. But he published a lot of the first names and a lot of this. When you all see the scientific name of a plant, even humans, he named us humans, Homo sapiens. You will see a capital letter L period next to the name. That was him. Most botanist names will be next to who named the plant. And with animals, it's the same way. The zoologist that named them is usually spelled or abbreviated. But he published a collection of names, a book called Species Planetarium in 1753. He was the first to create binomial nomenclature. Up until this point, you had things with 10 words as their name. I barely fit half the stuff I grow on one label, let alone 10 words. Now, gymnosperms, I'm sure we've all have heard of at least the term gymnosperms. Some of us may not. Cicades, conifers, and ginkgos are gymnosperms. Gymnosperm means naked seed. They are not enclosed within an ovary, meaning they are not, they don't produce flowers like we know flowers, and they don't produce fruit. Most gymnosperms produce cones or something like a cone, like the pine tree that's pictured here. Cicades also produce these. I doubt you will see much of a cicade. They're an ancient genus of plants related to palms. In gymnosperms, the pollen and ovules are produced on separate or in separate male and female cones. Cones you should always associate with gymnosperms. Conifer, cone. Conifers are pine trees, cedar trees, and anything related to those, junipers. They reproduce and disperse by means of seed, but they lack an endosperm, the inside of the seed. They're not produced within a fruit like a peach, like a tomato. They're produced in these cones. Most gymnosperms grow very slowly. Most gymnosperms are generally woody plants. Most have needle-like leaves, scale leaves, or broad leaves. Hemlock trees are an example. The cones that produce pollen and the seed cones, they may be produced on the same plant or on separate plants. It all depends on what you're dealing with. Most are produced on the same tree. It's safer for the plant to reproduce that way. In some, the seed cone, it could be fleshy or berry-like, but they are still defined as a gymnosperm. Angiosperms are what we all are more familiar with. They are the genus or the grouping of flowering plants. It means container seed. They are enclosed within an ovary, a fruit, like this apple here. A peach is one. A tomato is one. Angiosperms are ancient. Gymnosperms are older. How many of us have seen a ginkgo tree or know what a ginkgo tree is? For those of you that don't, ginkgo trees are an ancient genus of gymnosperms. They produce these berry-like fruits that stink to high heaven if you have a female tree. They produce leaves that look like a fan. They are one of the oldest trees that still exist. They basically look the way they did when the dinosaurs were walking this planet. Ginkgo biloba is the only species that still exists. There were about 6 or 7 originally during the prehistoric era, but they all went extinct. But the ginkgo is a very fascinating, very old tree. One of the oldest angiosperms is the magnolia, which we all should hopefully know what a magnolia is. They date back to ancient times. They co-evolved with insects. Insects drove angiosperm evolution, and angiosperms drove insect evolution. Of course, back then, dragonflies were the size of your car. Centipedes were about long as one of these tables in the middle here. So be happy that that era is long past us. But angiosperms, their pollen and their ovules are produced by specialized structures called flowers. They are dispersed also by seeds, which have an endosperm though. And angiosperms are generally divided into monocots and dicots. Gymnosperms are not generally divided up. But flowers, think of angiosperms as flowering plants. Always remember angiosperms as flowering plants. They are the most common ones you will come into contact with. Monocots. Monocots and dicots are also very important. Monocots have one embryo. They have one cotyledon. A seed leaf is a better way to think of a cotyledon. Their stems are organized with scattered vascular bundles. Those are what bring water and nutrients in and out of the plant. The leaf veins of monocots are usually parallel, like in this third picture here. Not the Zoom meeting though, not that. That, I believe that is either a wild onion or it also looks like a lily of the valley. But you can see that the veins are parallel. They all run in the same direction. That is generally what a monocot leaf looks like. And monocots also have petals or sepals, like this trillium flower. This is a trillium, native to Florida, but it also looks like the ones that we have in Tennessee that grow in the mountains. With monocots, they're arranged in groups of 3. These white parts are actual petals. These green parts are modified petals called sepals. Monocots, again, floral parts in 3. There is no secondary growth, meaning they have no true wood or bark. Monocots, you can think of corn. Corn is a monocot. It comes up corn and wheat. Most grasses are monocots. They have one spike when they grow, when they come up. Trilliums are the same way. Lily of the valley is the same way. And this is a microscopic cell picture of the inside of a monocot stem. Dicots are what you will also probably have more contact with. Their embryos have 2 cotyledons when they sprout. Their stems are organized in rings, as you see here. This soybean that is sprouting, it has 2 cotyledons here. This is the true leaf coming out of the middle. This is common with dicots. It's what you should always see, no matter what may be growing or what you see or someone is asking you. Be prepared for people to ask you if what is sprouting is what they planted. The amount of people I've had, is this a cucumber? It's a pigweed. That is not the same thing. So again, very important. And their leaf, the veins of the leaves are usually branching. In botany, we use a fancy term called reticulate. Some plants have reticulata in their scientific name. It just means reticulated. You see on this leaf here, which looks like a hydrangea or a viburnum bush. They have branching leaves or branching veins in the leaves. They look like little baby trees. And their floral parts, their flowers, are in groups of 4s or 5s. This scarlet pimpernel here has 5 petals and 4 or 5 sepals. And they are capable of secondary growth. Dicots are. They make true wood and bark. Trees are usually dicots. And then you also have very complicated arrangements. For the most part, most of this, you don't even have to worry about writing this down. I'm just showing it to you. You have some that fall into almost both categories. This group, the Piper ales, this is where your black pepper comes from. That is what that's the classification for black pepper, one of the families that it is in. Laurels, this is your rhododendrons, your laurel bushes, your azaleas is in this family. Magnolias, this is something that does not grow here. These are water lilies and everything related to water lilies. We also don't have those here either. But in real world terms, because this is how I break down stuff for my 12th graders, because they are 12th graders. They don't really care about anything else. Base your general angiosperms and magnolids, your magnolias, your angiosperms. They account for 2% of all angiosperms. These are water lilies, star anise, magnolias, nutmeg, and peperomias, which are grown as houseplants by most people. Monocots account for 23% of all angiosperms. These are grasses, orchids, bromeliads, and palms. Grasses being the most common, orchids as well. And eudicots, which are considered true dicots, they account for for 75% of all angiosperms. These are oaks, roses, cacti, mints, asters, pretty much everything that's not listed in the other 2. Generally, Wikipedia is your best friend. As an English teacher, wisely use Wikipedia. It is not always right. The amount of students I have that ask me, well, Wikipedia said it. I don't care if Jesus said it on Wikipedia. Jesus did not say it on Wikipedia. Little Jimmy down the road said it on Wikipedia. Plant morphology is the study of the physical form and the external structures of your plant, of a plant. It is what helps you understand a plant's functions and habitat preferences and how best to grow it. It is vital that you know this. You cannot plant a cactus here in Tennessee. It will, well, generally it would die, but the summer we had, it would probably thrive. But you can't plant a cactus in a swamp unless you have a water tolerant cactus, but those are few and far between. You can't plant your peppers in a swamp. They will rot, they will die. But it also helps you recognize plant families because botany is based on what a plant looks like. That is how we know that not every plant on this planet is the same. And generally plants within the same family look alike. They're not identical, but they look alike. Your Lamiaceae is your mint family. Everything mint related is in this family. Whether it is bee balm, whether it is salvia, whether it is rosemary, which is now a salvia, which is now makes rosemary a sage, because they can't leave well enough alone. Anything in the mint family, peppermint, spearmint, apple mint, blueberry mint. I don't know if there is blueberry mint. Probably now there is. Banana mint. I know there's banana mint, pineapple sage. All of that is in the mint family. Generally, when they tell you to not plant mint in the ground, it's because you will have a garden of it within 3 months. Because it spreads underground like a weed. But everything within the mint family, within the Lamiaceae family, their stems are quadrangular, meaning they're square shaped. Bee balm has square shaped stems. Basically all your mints have square stems. It's an easy way to tell if it's mint. Your leaves are opposite of each other. One is on one side, one is on the other, usually they look like they're in pairs, and they kind of are in pairs. This is a wild plant we have here called self-heal. And on the left, it's called horehound, which is used to treat respiratory ailments. It became very popular when the COVID broke out. I also have a background in herbal medicine. Their flowers are considered perfect. They're generally tubular. Most of us have probably grown some form of sage in our time. They're these real pretty tubular looking flowers. They have two lips. Their calyx is often enlarged and persistent. And their fruit is generally considered a nutlet. You generally won't see the seed of most of these plants unless you're saving it. Mint seed is very tiny. So with plant morphology, you're going to first examine the entire plant. I take coffee breaks all the time teaching. Only reason I'm still standing. I was teaching for 7 hours today, 6 hours today. You're going to look at the plant's habit. Is it woody? Is it a tree? Is it a shrub? Is it not a shrub? Is it herbaceous? Is it non-woody? Is it an herb or a forb? And is it suffuscent? Suffuscent, that word. That word. I have days like this, I can't talk. But it means it's mostly herbaceous, but it develops a woody base over time. Again, in translation, are you looking at a tree, a shrub, an actual plant, an herb, or is it a vine? Surely we all can classify plants that way. But a vine may be herbaceous, it may be woody. We don't have lianas here, we have grapevines here. Or that S word. Normally I can say stuff, but not today, not tonight. And you will look at the form. Is it upright? Meaning, does it stand? Does it sprawl across the ground? Is it arching? Does it have a rosette? Does it trail along the ground? Is it prostrate? The branching pattern, is it unbranched? Does it have a lot of branches? Does it have a few branches? Are they near the base? Are they up the entire stem, the trunk? Is the crown wide open like a tree? Is it not? The plant size, its height and width, its seasonality. By the end of this, I'll be lucky to say a sentence. Is it woody? Is it deciduous? Does it shed its leaves? Does it keep its leaves? Or does it briefly shed its leaves? Is it herbaceous? Is it an annual, a perennial, or biennial? And then its hardiness. Generally, a lot of the things I love to grow are from the tropics. You cannot grow turmeric here in Tennessee and get away with it, unless it's in a greenhouse. In some parts, you might be able to get away with it, but generally, please don't plant something that is a zone 10 and expect it to overwinter here. No, just no, no. I have had people ask me, my tropical hibiscus died. Well, I wonder why. I can't imagine why it would have died at 0 degrees or 10 degrees this winter. You do need to know your plant's hardiness. You will have people that will ask you, if it's hardy, it will survive the winter. If it is tender, it will usually handle a frost and will come back, or it may not. And if it's completely tropical, don't even let it hear about 32 degrees, because it will be dead. It will scream and run inside your door. I've lost a lot of plants that way. And then you're going to look at each organ of the plant from the ground up. Now, unless you dig up the plant, and if you're in someone's yard, please don't dig up their plant unless they ask you to. That's different. Just don't go and dig up someone's yard. I have a lot of pretty things in my yard. Happens from time to time. But you're going to look at the roots, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, and the fruit. This is a basic plant here. This is a grass, a monocot. This is a dicot. I'm not going to go over this because we all should know what most of these general parts of a plant are. But your internodes are the parts of your stem, the sections between leaves, where your leaves come from. Of course, you have your stem. Your nodes are where the leaf or leaves connects into the stem of the plant. Then you, of course, have your flowers, which are broken down into petals and whatnot. And then you have your roots. Now, roots serve common functions that we all are probably aware of. They absorb water and nutrients. That is their purpose, main purpose. They also anchor the plant in place. Plants started in the ocean, in the sea, and they moved onto land. So they moved around a lot. If plants didn't have roots, they'd basically be floating around in space, or they'd be blowing around like a tumbleweed. They also have conductance. They take the water and minerals and move it up the xylem. And the sugar moves down a tube in the plant called a phloem. The xylem moves water, and the sugars are moved via the phloem. And roots also generally serve as a storage of water and sugars, carbohydrates. Some modified leaves will, but it's generally the roots. That is why all the leaves fall when fall comes. All that energy and nutrients is shifted down to the roots of the tree. It is stored there. Potatoes do that. You have with roots, you have a primary root, which is your tap root, like a carrot. Most trees have tap roots. Dandelions have tap roots. I'm sure we all have found that out. They're delicious, but very bitter. They are edible. They were brought here originally. They're not native here. They do have dandelions that have pink flowers. They're not weedy. They're very pretty. Fun fact. You have secondary roots, which you will generally hear called fibrous roots, which are like this, which is what you all are probably commonly used to seeing. Most tap roots will have a few side fibrous roots, but it is this main root. This becomes their storage organ, especially. And then on your secondary roots, you have these really tiny things called root hairs. They are what often do a lot of your water absorption, nutrients, making contact with mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria, which my dad will get into when he does your guys' soils. And you also have adventitious roots. They're not underground generally. How many of you know what Virginia creeper is? How many of you know what poison ivy is? Thank God. They produce adventitious roots. With Virginia creeper, they make these little things that look like a hand. They stick to whatever they touch, and that's how they climb. Those are adventitious roots. Poison ivy creates them. Sometimes if those fall into the ground, they will actually produce roots, but generally they're to hold the plant in place. And this this is your primary root. It's usually thickest, and your secondary roots are smaller. The same way with this leaf cutting here. This is the stem, and then this is your adventitious roots. So a lot of plants don't produce these. If you all grow corn, when the plant gets tall and there's roots shooting out of the side, the ones that don't touch the ground are called adventitious roots. Even the ones that do touch the ground are, but they generally don't reach that far down. This is a fibrous root system. You don't see a taproot. With this one, you do. This is a taprooted plant. Generally, you will have the soil and the taproot is underground. Generally, your roots will be underground unless you're doing hydroponics. And even then, that's usually underwater. Tree roots. This is why they tell you to be careful when you're digging a tree. You all will have someone talk about trees, so I'm not going to overstep her boundaries. But your tree has roots that shoot out very far. Corn sends roots about 4 feet out at least. They usually go out much farther. All of the plants in your yard are probably touching roots, and they talk to each other underground via the fungi and the bacteria. If one plant is getting eaten, it'll tell the other plants, hey, you should start producing a chemical so you don't get eaten. It's very fascinating. It's how trees talk to each other too. But this is your taproot. It grows first when a tree sprouts. And you have lateral roots which are fibrous roots that go out. They absorb water, they anchor the tree. You have others that go deeper in the ground. When we have years like this year where we have hardly had any rain, they can find water so the tree doesn't die. Stems have three primary functions. They're conductive via the xylem and the phloem. Xylem is water, phloem is sugar. They support and elevate the leaves, the flowers, and the fruit. Basically, most of our body. And they store water and carbohydrates. Stems are pretty much nothing but water, almost, and sugars. In some cases, they may act as photosynthesis, especially in cacti. Sometimes they exchange gases, and in other times, they're thorns. Thorns are modified stems. They are not leaves, but thorns are actually modified stems. And like I was saying earlier, you have nodes and you have buds. Nodes is where a leaf or leaves are attached to the stem. The spaces between these nodes are called internodes. Not toes, but nodes. The buds are the actual growing points. I'm sure we all have seen the buds on trees and bushes and things when winter is finally over. The terminal bud is the main bud. It is at the end of the stem generally. Your other little buds are lateral buds. They're generally at the base of a leaf. That way, if this one gets cut off, these can take its place and still grow. And like it says, you may get a lot of adventitious buds on an injured stem. It all depends on the plant. Most plants will produce it. Then inside your stem, you have the phloem. It conducts the photosynthetic products bidirectionally. And your xylem conducts water and minerals in one direction. Phloem has two directions. Your xylem has one direction. Both of these tissues are produced by what is called the vascular cambium, the cambium layer. I don't know how much bigger this will get. So in the xylem, I'm going to fall over. In the xylem here, one way only. Water and minerals can only go one way. There is no end walls between the cell, and the walls are stiff with lignin. In the phloem here, there's a two-way flow. One goes up, one goes down. Water and food goes up and down. The cells have cell walls with perforations. And again, it is a two-way flow. Are we overwhelmed yet? Now you have different types of stems. Crowns, like the top of a tree. Simple, branch, climbing, creeping, rhizomes, stolons. Or you get acaulescent, which has no stems. But most of us are probably familiar with Bermuda grass. I hate it. Johnson grass, I hate it. They produce rhizomes. Irises produce rhizomes. They are underground stems. When they spread, they sprout up into actual plants. St. Augustine grass and other plants like strawberries produce what are called stolons, which are above ground stems. When these touch soil, they root and create a brand new plant, and this process keeps going. And this is a rhizotomous plant here. You have the main mother plant and you have the rhizomes that spread. And if you have a stoloniferous plant, you have the mother plant and you have little stolons. These are on top of the ground. These are underground. If you ever fought Johnson grass, you know what I'm talking about. It will not leave your yard, even no matter how much you scream at it. Now, there are modifications to your stems. Well, not your stems, but the plant stems. And this is mainly for climbing, twining, Stems, if they're vines, they have the ability to twine, to swirl and twirl around things. Morning glories are very good at this. Tendrils are also modified stems. They're usually used for gripping. The tendril, for most of us, we will see on squash and pumpkins, mainly with pumpkins. And you have different types of tendrils, but you will generally not see much difference. And actually, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is from Virginia creeper. These are the creepiest looking things, but they anchor the plant when they're growing up. Sometimes it will produce adventitious roots too, but generally these are modified stems. This is a grapevine tendril. This is, I believe, a clematis, and I have no idea what that is. Something probably from Florida that we don't have here, it looks like. Now, we think that tubers are roots. They're not. They're actually modified stems that act as storage. Rhizomes are like this. Ginger is a rhizome. Turmeric is a rhizome. You have stem tubers like potatoes, and you have corms like taro, elephant ears is what we call them here. I don't know what a cocoa yam is, but we don't grow those here. Other things that have corms are gladiolas. Tulips are generally considered corms. But your potato is actually a modified stem. It is a tuber. They grow underground, but they're still a tuber, or they're still a stem. They are a tuber, clearly, but because with a potato, each eye is an axillary bud that we were talking about. And these are your terminal buds. These can all grow into a plant, but this will generally will be your main plant. That's why you can cut a potato in half and plant both ends, because each axillary bud, each eye will become like another plant. And you get the same end. Like I was saying, with defense, you do have modifications, like with this locust, which I call in Tennessee thorn trees. These can get about that long if the tree is old enough. But thorns, spines, or thorns are modified stems, spines are modified leaves, and prickles are modified hairs. It all depends on the plant. Most thorns you will see on thorn trees and shrubs. There are plants that have them. There are some plants related to eggplants that have spines about this big. Needless to say, you don't want to run into one. Leaves serve 5 common functions. They absorb sunlight because they have to for photosynthesis. They are involved in photosynthesis. They are what exchanges gas. They absorb CO2 and release oxygen. They also are involved in transpiration, the loss of water, which we talked about earlier. And they store some of the photosynthates, some of the products and other things that is used in photosynthesis. But then you have some that may be modified for climbing, or for defense, or for pollination. Some plants have leaves that look like petals. Poinsettias are one of those. What we consider the flowers of poinsettias, the pretty colors that we see, those are leaves. Those are not petals. Poinsettia flowers are very tiny. Most of us don't get to see them usually. Your leaf is broken up into a blade. It is the flattened whole part of the leaf. The petiole is the stalk of the leaf. The stipules are the little things that stick out at the end of a leaf, at the base of the petiole. The base is where it's closest to the stem. The tip or the apex is the blade portion furthest from the stem. Your margins are the edge of the leaf, And your midrib or your primary vein is the central vein that you see in leaves, right there, not over here. And these are your secondary or your lateral veins that you see in leaves. Like we saw earlier, some plants don't have branching veins in their leaves. Most plants you will encounter look like this. Of course, they're not blue, but, well, most are not blue. There are blue. Phyllotaxy is a fancy word in botany for leaf arrangements. Alternating, one leaf per node. One goes this way, one goes that way. One goes this way, one goes that way. Opposite, there are 2 leaves per node, usually in pairs. Then you have whorled that are about 3 leaves or more. There are not very many plants that have whorled leaves in Tennessee. There's a couple sunflowers that do. We have some milkweed that does. Most of your plants will be like this. They will either be alternate or opposite. And then you have the arrangement on the stem. They can be in spirals like this. They can be deciduous like this. They can be decussate, or they can be equitant. Generally, you will not probably use these words. You will identify them by what they look like. This leek onion here would be considered an equitant. But you will generally not have to use these words unless you're writing a botanical report or you find a new plant species, which is not unheard of, but also rare. So this is an example of a simple or compound leaf. I thought about plucking one when I got home from teaching today, but I didn't feel like it. And I knew there was pictures in here. This is a simple leaf. It is one unit. It is one leaf. So this is a compound leaf. Multiple of these put together. Your ash trees, your sumacs, they are all compound leaves. Simple leaves would be like redbuds, dogwoods, magnolias. Mimosa trees that we have here are compound leaves. They're very compound because they have multiple ones. A simple leaf has a single blade, and a compound leaf has 2 or more blades, which is because they have 2 or more leaves. Usually compound leaves are in pairs, but they're each made up of a separate leaflet. And then you have your bud. So these are more examples. This scented geranium would be considered simple. Whatever this vine is would be compound, and this would be compound. I think this is a mimosa. It looks like a mimosa. And then you have sweet gum here. You have, that also looks like a mimosa. Whatever that thing is. This is compound, this is compound. This is technically single because even though it has multiple sections like a hand, they're not organized like these. They're not individual leaflets. This is all one leaf, the sweet gum. Yeah. This may be sickle paw, what they call senna. It was used to make coffee with at one point. Okay, that's enough examples. Although this is Virginia creeper. This is what people commonly confuse for poison ivy. Poison ivy has leaves of 3, not 5. This looks like one of the shrubs I hate. And this looks like a young butterfly bush. These are compound. These are compound. These are simple or single. Okay, we're done. Now you will have leaves again. This is referred to as palmate because it looks like a hand. If they're in pairs, it's called bipinnate. Or simple, even, or odd. It all depends on how they're arranged and how many there are. With compound leaves, leaflet is pretty important to know. It's the units of a compound leaf. Your rachis is an extension of the petiole. It is what bears each leaflet. And your petiole is the stalk of the individual leaflet. Generally, you will not have to use this term. Rachis and leaflet, especially leaflet, you will use. Rachis is usually only used if you're very botanical. Now, how do your leaves attach? This is also important. Are they petiolate with the petiole and the leaf stalk? Are they sessile? They lack a petiole, like here. Are they clasping around the stem? Or are they peltate, or they look like an umbrella? It's attached at the top instead of at the side. And then you have all of your common leaf shapes. There are so many leaf shapes, it is incredible. The genus of maples alone has hundreds of different types of leaf shapes. It is incredible. But these are all different types of leaf shapes. Cordate is usually heart-shaped. These are what redbuds are. Deltoid are usually what poplars are, tulip poplars and lindens and all of those trees. And then you do have different types of leaf tips. You generally may or may not have to know these. These are referring to on angles. I did not do well in math, so we're not going to bother with that. But generally, you really won't have to bother with leaf tips all that much because you're looking at other ways to identify the plant. In some cases, they may be defined by what their tips look like, but that is generally rare. And then you have all the different types of leaf bases. This is also fascinating to look at. Sagatate is one of my favorites because it looks very interesting. Hastate and auriculate are as well. Most of what you will see will probably be obtuse, round, acute, acuminate, or maybe some cunate or cordate, but generally it'll be these two. And then leaf margins. You may see all different mixtures of these. Basically you can think of these as, does your leaf have teeth or does it not have teeth? If it doesn't, it's called entire. Undulate, it's kind of wavy. And then you start getting into the serrate, which means it has teeth. Lobed, you can consider teeth, but they're not really serrated. They're lobed. Then you have crenate, which are kind of like wavy bumps almost. These are all different types of leaf margins that you will see. Then you have leaf texture. These are very fancy words. I would learn these words. Don't even worry about these things. We botanists love to make things complicated. Are they papery? Are they leathery? Or are they fleshy or juicy like succulent? This is the coriaceous, the leathery. This is papery. Most plants are papery. Magnolia leaves, which I think this is one, are leathery. And then aloe vera has fleshy leaves. Most succulents do. Leaf surfaces. They have a lower and an upper surface, which we're all probably aware of. Some have hair and some don't have hair. Some have glands that are dotted. They look like you took a paintbrush and dotted with black ink or black paint. They can be woolly, meaning they're covered in soft white hair. Pubescent is as well. You can think of pubescent as like a peach or a peach fuzz. They may be bumpy. They could have scales. They could be coarse and stiff. They could be sharp. They could be pressed. There's thousands of different types. Some plants on the underside of their leaves or even on the top side, they have a blue powder that protects them from heat. It's called glaucus. Then you have all the different types of leaf veins. We, as botanists, decided long ago that we're going to make this all complicated. When, in my opinion, it has veins. Great, let's move on. But it's not that simple. Parallel veins, pinnate veins, palmate, reticulate, impressed, raised, prominent, or obscure. We saw parallel earlier, palmate. Some plants only have 3 veins. Others are reticulated, they have many. Then you have pinnate, which are in pairs. When we all draw flowers in school, we drew these types of leaves, usually, hopefully. And then stipules. You may probably not really use these, but I'm just going to briefly go over them. They are leaf appendages. They're usually paired. They're located at the base of the petiole. This is what we call a rubber tree, a ficus. They have these. They're pretty. They're usually colored. Sometimes they're at the like this. These are all different types. But they're meant to protect the bud, or they may be modified into tendrils or spines, or enlarge. I don't really know of a proper why you would need to know this unless you're identifying a new plant. And this is what I was saying. Modified leaves are called bracts. They are meant to attract pollinators or protect the developing flowers. This is a poinsettia. These are the real flowers of the poinsettia or poinsettia, depending. These are actually modified leaves called bracts. They protect the flowers inside. This is a bougainvillea, depending on how you want to pronounce it. These are what we love as flowers, but this is your real flower. This is a banana. These are your true flowers. These are bracts. Dogwoods, what we consider petals, are actually modified leaves. They're bracts, the white parts and the pink parts. These little bitty things inside that make up the centers, those are your true flowers. And then this is what's called a shrimp plant. You don't usually see these. These are your flowers. The yellow spiky shrimp-like part is a bract, a group of bracts. Now, I think we all know what a flower is meant to do. They attract pollinators. That's the purpose of a petal. This is a gardenia. And they're for reproduction. When fertilized, the ovary develops into a fruit, which contains seed. Most plant classification is based on flower morphology, because not every flower is alike. Now, you have sepals, which are these, your calyx. You have your petals, the red part. This is a terrible picture. You have your perianth, which is your sepals and your petals together. Your stamens, they are broken down into filaments, and the anther, which is at the top, the little black part, that's what's covered in pollen, which is generally yellow. And you have your pistil, which is the female portion, which contains the stigma, the style, and then you have your ovary. Then you have more of this. A complete flower has petals, sepals, stamens, and pistils. If it is perfect, it is considered bisexual. It has both stamens and pistils. It is male and female all in one. If it's imperfect, it's only one. It's either male or female. They can be on different plants or the same plant. It all depends on what you're dealing with. This is where the terms monoecious and dioecious come in. Monoecious is both imperfect on one plant, and dioecious are either on separate plants. Di means two, mono means one. Flowers come in a vast array of different shapes and sizes. We all are probably aware of this. It is how Mother Nature evolved. It's how we have such diversity of things. This is a philodendron. Most of us probably have these as house plants. They do flower. It is very rare that we have them flower. But flowers come in all shapes and sizes. We all know this. Pollination is the primary purpose for flowers. There are adaptations for pollination, whether it's by a bat, a butterfly, bees, hummingbirds, beetles, ants. It all depends. The flower structure, color, scent, and timing reflect the pollinating organism or the mechanism. If they are pollinated by bats, they're going to open when? Thank you. At night, yes. Some bees are out at night. For those of you that grow pumpkins, we have a native bee called a squash bee. They follow squash's migration up through the Americas. They're the ones that if you look in your flowers up until about 11 a.m., they're sleeping in the flower. That's the job I wish I had, to sleep in a flower. I would be much happier probably. Now, a lot of colors are dependent on what pollinates them, as are smells. Are we attracted to something that smells like rotting meat? No, hopefully not. Flies can be a pollinator, but it depends. Generally, bats like flowers that are dull white, green, or purple. They have strong fruity smells. They have a certain shape to them. They usually have a lot of nectar. Bees like bright white, yellow, or blue flowers. Blue is rare in nature. Beetles like dull white and green. Birds love orange, red, and white. That's why our hummingbird feeders are orange and red. It's because that's the colors they like and the colors they see. Butterflies also like orange and red and purples. Flies like things that look dead, like me at 6 in the morning when I'm teaching. And wind. If it's wind pollinated, they're usually a weird green or brown color because they don't need to be pollinated by anything but the wind. But this is a very good chart. It helps you understand why your plants are pollinated the way they are. If we were in Arizona, I'd be more concerned about bats, but we don't have giant cacti here. I do, but they're in a greenhouse. Now, Darwin. How are we all familiar with Charles Darwin? Most of us familiar with Charles Darwin. Raise your hand if you know who Charles Darwin is. Thank you. He is the man that created the theory of evolution. He traveled to the Galapagos Islands. I have the cactus he saw on those islands. I have 2 of them. Eventually, I hope to have all of them, but I'm poor. He discovered this moth, which is called Darwin's orchid. They're very pretty. It is pollinated by this sphinx moth. That's its tongue. It sticks its tongue all the way in the flower. It goes all the way down because the nectar is at the very bottom of these flowers. That is called evolution. This is only pollinated by this. I wonder why. If this was to go extinct, this would go extinct because they rely on each other. And a lot of plants you may see, they will be named after someone. Generally, if they discovered it, they will name it. Even though this is called Darwin's orchid, it has a completely different species name. And then you have solitary or grouped flowers. Solitary or single flowers, like this lotus here. I love lotuses. We have a native species here in Tennessee called the American lotus. And then you have groups of flowers called an inflorescence. You can call that a flower cluster. That's what I call them. They're born in what is called a peduncle. This is a foxglove that has many of them. They may be branched or unbranched. It all depends on what you're dealing with. And some of your flowers may have stalks or may not be stalked. It depends on what flower you're dealing with. And then you have determinate and indeterminate types of inflorescences. Indeterminate, the terminal flower bud blooms first, which halts the sides, I call them side shoots, which halts your other stems from blooming or other flowers from blooming. In your indeterminate, the lower portions will bloom first. Think of determinate as they bloom from top to bottom. Indeterminate, they bloom from bottom to top. It's an evolutionary thing that keeps plants to be sure they can reproduce. You do have different types of inflorescences. Again, we botanists love to make things complicated, but each plant is different. I'm not going to read you all of these. This is a lot, but you can see that they're organized differently. An umbel is what carrots and Queen Anne slates generally have. Most of your flowers will be in spikes or racemes or panicles. That's most common. But you may have to know this, but at least be able to identify how the plant blooms. Then you have fruits, which functions as what protects the developing seed. It is the physical barrier between the immature seed and the environment, and also the mature seed in the environment. They also usually aid in dispersal of mature seeds. This is a milkweed pod. The little brown portion is your seed. The white fluff is what carries the seed off so it can be carried off from the mother plant. The pod is what protects this. This white portion during the Civil War was used as stuffing and pillows because it is very soft. Thistledown was too, but that's too much work for me. Now with fruits, you have a pericarp, which is the fruit wall, like in this apple. It is what we eat, the flesh. You can break that down into an exocarp, a mesocarp, and an endocarp. Your endocarp would be like your pit. The mesocarp would be the flesh, and the exocarp is the skin. Rarely will you ever have to break it down that in depth. Placenta is the part of the ovary which the seeds are attached. And then the seed itself is the mature ovule. It contains the embryo, and in angiosperms, it contains the endosperm. With fruits, fruits are the ripened seed-bearing ovaries of flowers. Their fruits come in basically as much diversity as the flower itself does. Fruits can be distinguished, the distinguishing characteristics. Apples and peaches are not the same thing. You can tell them apart by that. You can divide fruits into four more larger categories, whether they're dry or fleshy, whether they're dehiscent, they split open, or they don't split open. These are some examples of dry fruits. Achenes, samaras, nuts, caryopsis, capsules, legumes, and follicles. These are maple seeds. These are sunflower seeds. These look like some form of iris lily relatives. Why do I know that? This is characteristic of those, of the way the pods are. Maples, I believe they are called samaras. They're the ones that twirl down, that we all love. You can actually eat them. Then you have fleshy fruits, which can be broken down into drupes, berries, hesperidium. You will never use that one. Probably won't ever use that one either unless you're in a citrus grove, or a pepo. And you do have compound fleshy fruits, and aggregate ones from the separate carpels like blackberries, magnolias, or strawberries. And then you have multiple from pistils of several flower clusters, pineapples, mulberries, and sycamores. Sycamores have the little balls that hang down that when you poke them, they explode. Or if you hold them, they explode. And then seeds. Seeds have an outer seed coat called a testa. It's usually tough. It's meant to protect the inside. Angiosperms have what is called an endosperm. It is the nutritive tissue. It is what feeds the seed when it germinates. And they also contain an embryo, which is the new plant. Seeds are technically living organisms. They are living plants. They're just dormant. They haven't sprouted yet. They're sleeping still, if you want to think of it that way. Some are small, like tobacco seed. And then you have what this guy is holding called a coco de mer. It's the largest seed in the world. They're gigantic. Imagine getting hit in the head with one of those. Yes, it belongs to a palm tree, a coconut tree, a type of coconut tree. Now, if some of you are doing stuff in the wild, you will recognize these. Austin Peay has a very beautiful herbarium. These are herbarium specimens. This is a red hibiscus, and this is a pitcher plant. These pitcher plants are modified leaves. These are insect eating. They eat bugs. They love mosquitoes and wasps and hornets. But if any of you have to do stuff in the field, say with botany or actual botany or anything, you may become familiar with this layout of a herbarium specimen. Most of us probably won't actually have to use these. I've collected some myself a few times or two. And then that's all I have for you all. Do you have any questions? I know you're overwhelmed. My seniors always are every time I say something. Yes, sir.
Can a perfect flower self-pollinate?
It is possible, yes. A lot of flowers evolve to self-pollinate. A lot of them also evolve to have to require, I say animal pollination. We humans can do it too. I pollinated squash this morning before going to school. So tomatoes are self-pollinated unless they're potato leaf. Potato leaf tomatoes are very promiscuous. They will cross with anything near them. So be careful. You need to plant one at one end of your garden and the other at the other end. I speak from experience. Margaret. I did not. I wanted to go, but I had training the day it blew. So I didn't get to see it. I wanted to see it. Attendance is much better than my seniors, and participation is much better than my seniors. You all are observant and pay attention. You're not on your phones and not screaming at me because I didn't say something. But I appreciate you all. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Oh, we have soils next week.
Yep.
All right, so I would read the section on soils management. And I'm gonna check and see if we have any questions in the chat box or anything. Does anybody online have any questions before we close up the meeting? No? Okay, well, just remember, go back and read the material. We don't expect you to know it by heart, by day one. So it'll all come together as we build and build. Yes. Are we gonna cover mushrooms? I hadn't thought about it specifically, but if we need to, we can. Okay. I will try to cover mushrooms at some point in time. Okay. Okay.